Welcome to Episode 13 of Bordertraveller podcast about how Europe reclaims its digital sovereignty. Take it away, guys.
Imagine, you decide to lock your most private, sensitive diary inside this state-of-the-art European bank vault.
Okay, sounds safe enough.
Right. I mean, you pay for the top-tier security, you trust the local laws protecting that vault, and you feel entirely safe. But then, like months later, you discover this horrifying loophole.
Oh, no.
Yeah. A law passed over 4,000 miles away legally requires the manufacturer of your vault's door to keep a master key. And if a foreign government asks for it, that manufacturer has to hand over the key, walk right into your local vault, and just take your diary.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, that completely shatters the illusion of security right there. You suddenly realize you never actually had control over your own privacy to begin with.
Exactly. And welcome to the Deep Dive. I'm thrilled you're joining us today because that vault scenario, it isn't just some hypothetical metaphor.
No, it's very real.
It's the exact realization that has sparked this massive, quiet revolution across Europe. Today, our mission is to examine how the continent is aggressively reclaiming control over its digital landscape. We're looking at a fundamental redesign of data ethics and user privacy protections.
Right. Moving from this era of naive openness to one of highly strategic protectionism.
Exactly. And we've gathered some fascinating trend analyses and data points from 2025 and early 2026 to really unpack this. So what does this all mean? When we talk about European tech sovereignty, what are we actually looking at on the ground?
Well, at its core, European tech sovereignty is it's the active pursuit of digital self-determination. It's really about a region building the capacity to control its own digital destiny across every single layer of the tech stack.
So we're talking hardware, software, data.
Yeah, all of it. The hardware, the software, the underlying data, and importantly, the regulatory standards governing them. Because, for decades, the European Union leaned super heavily on non-European tech giants to power just its daily digital life.
Right.
But as global geopolitical tensions have escalated recently, there's been this collective awakening. Relying on foreign infrastructure isn't just an economic vulnerability anymore.
It's an ethical one.
Exactly. It's a profound ethical vulnerability. So tech sovereignty is this process of building a self-sufficient ecosystem that actually aligns with European values regarding privacy, transparency, and data protection.
And to really understand why this shift is happening with such urgency right now, I mean, we have to look at the baseline. We have to look at the specific vulnerabilities that pushed European governments to this breaking point.
Yeah, the starting point was pretty bleak.
Oh, it's staggering.
Yeah.
When you dig into the infrastructure data from the last few years, the reality of where European information actually lives it's just wild.
It is. I mean, historically, over 80% of European data has been stored or processed by non-EU hyperscalers.
80%.
Yeah. We're talking about the massive centralized cloud infrastructures, your AWS, your Azure, Google Cloud. And that 80% figure isn't just like Netflix streaming histories or online shopping habits.
Right, it's the critical stuff.
Exactly. It encompasses the most sensitive pillars of a functioning society. Government communications, citizen health records, financial data, public infrastructure logistics.
Right.
When 8 out of 10 pieces of your societal memory and operational data are sitting on servers legally controlled by foreign corporations, I mean, you're operating at a severe ethical deficit.
Which brings us right back to that bank vault analogy. Because physically building a data center in, say, Paris or Berlin doesn't actually solve the problem if the corporate entity running it is headquartered somewhere else.
Precisely. And the catalyst that really illuminated this for European lawmakers was the implication of the U.S. Cloud Act.
Ah, right. This was a huge deal.
Huge. During some high-profile testimonies, it was confirmed under oath that European data, even when physically located inside data centers built within the borders of the EU, it still remains legally vulnerable to access requests from the United States government.
That's just crazy to think about.
Yeah. The mechanism is simple but incredibly far-reaching. Because the parent company managing the data is legally based in the U.S., they are subject to U.S. jurisdiction.
Makes sense legally, but yeah.
Right, and that jurisdiction can compel them to hand over data regardless of where the physical hard drives are actually plugged into the wall.
Okay, but let me push back on this for a second, just to play devil's advocate here. The United States and Europe are, long-standing allies.
Sure.
They share a vast majority of the same democratic values and geopolitical goals. So why is this specific jurisdictional vulnerability considered such a massive, uncrossable ethical red line for EU governments.
Well, what's fascinating here is that for governments handling the sensitive data of their citizens, any foreign jurisdiction access fundamentally violates the core ethical principle of the GDPR.
The General Data Protection Regulation.
Exactly. The central mechanism of data sovereignty is that data must remain strictly under the legal protection of the citizens it belongs to.
Right.
If a foreign entity can just access your medical records or tax data without the consent or even the oversight of your local legal system, the ethical contract between the state and the citizen is just entirely broken.
Because the state can't actually guarantee the privacy it promised you.
Exactly.
And beyond the privacy implications, there's a massive economic friction here too, isn't there? Like, it's not just about who reads the data, it's about who controls the toll booth.
Oh, absolutely. The ethics of data sovereignty tie directly into the economic ethics of vendor lock-in.
How so?
Well, when a public sector entity, say a national healthcare system, when they migrate entirely to a proprietary foreign cloud, they lose all negotiating leverage. We've seen this result in aggressive, forced upgrade cycles.
Oh, I hate those.
Right. Entire ministries get forced onto new operating systems they didn't even ask for simply because the old ones are arbitrarily sunsetted.
Yeah.
And we've seen sudden 15% price increases on public sector contracts. So from an ethical standpoint, taxpayer money is being squeezed by foreign monopolies, and the government has absolutely no alternative but to pay up.
Because the technical cost of switching providers is engineered to be impossibly high.
Exactly.
So you have a situation where the foundational infrastructure of a continent is economically hostage and ethically compromised.
Yeah.
And recognizing this, European policymakers realized that just slapping a few fines on tech giants wasn't going to fix the underlying rot.
No, fines are just the cost of doing business for those companies.
Right. They needed to completely redesign the spaces where citizens interact every single day. And the most visible battleground for that is social media.
Yeah, social media basically functions as the modern public square. But right now, it's a public square privately owned, operated, and algorithmically manipulated by foreign corporations.
Which is a wild concept when you really think about it.
It is. So to address this, the European Union rolled out the Digital Services Act, the DSA, and the Digital Markets Act, the DMA.
Right, the big regulatory acronyms.
Yeah. But these aren't just sets of rules. They're structural blueprints designed to fundamentally alter how platforms operate within European borders.
It's really fascinating to observe this stark ideological clash playing out here, though. I mean, if you look at the U.S. approach, particularly under recent administrations, it is a distinctly libertarian philosophy.
Very hands-off.
Yeah. The primary goal is minimizing regulatory friction to maximize market innovation and platform growth. But the European model, conversely, places regulatory oversight at the absolute center of the ecosystem.
Treating them almost like public utilities.
Exactly. It's a massive philosophical divergence. Neither is necessarily right or wrong in a vacuum, but they are just fundamentally different ways to view technology.
Yeah, it's the difference between trusting the market to self-correct and mandating ethical guardrails by law. The European vision for a healthy social media ecosystem relies on three specific ethical pillars.
Okay, what are they?
Interoperability, data portability, and algorithmic transparency. These are the core mechanisms of accountability.
Got it.
Interoperability mandates that different competing platforms must be able to communicate with each other. And data portability ensures that you, the user, have the mechanical ability to pack up your entire history, your contacts, your posts, and just seamlessly move to a competitor if you disagree with a platform's policies.
Okay, let's unpack this for a second. Interoperability sounds great in theory. It means the walls of these massive digital walled gardens finally come down. But if you architect a system where it is completely effortless for users and data to jump seamlessly between different platforms, don't you simultaneously make it effortless for malicious actors to spread disinformation across the entire ecosystem all at once?
That's a fair point.
Like if all the plumbing is suddenly connected, doesn't the poison just spread faster?
It's a highly valid concern, and honestly, it's the exact reason why algorithmic transparency is the crucial third pillar.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, in the current closed system model, disinformation spreads rapidly, but researchers and regulators are completely blind to how the algorithm is pushing it. It's a total black box.
Right, nobody knows why it goes viral.
Exactly. Under the DSA framework, the mechanism changes. By forcing platforms to open their algorithms to scrutiny, Researchers can identify coordinated bot behaviors and throttle disinformation at the architectural level.
That makes a lot of sense.
Furthermore, the long-term goal is to foster locally owned, federated platforms networks like Mastodon, Xing, and Bluesky.
So how does that actually shift the power dynamic for, the person listening to this right now? If you're a user feeling trapped on a platform that is actively making your mental health worse or pushing radicalized content, what actually changes for you?
It completely changes your agency. Right now, if you leave a major platform, you leave your entire social graph behind.
Yeah, you lose everything.
You lose your friends, your audience, your professional network. It's basically a hostage situation. But with true data portability and interoperability, locally owned platforms are forced to compete purely on user satisfaction, privacy protection, and ethical moderation.
Because the switching cost is zero.
Exactly. If a platform becomes toxic, you don't have to start from scratch. You just take your network and plug it in somewhere else. The algorithm no longer holds you captive. The power of choice is mechanically returned to the user.
Man, that is powerful. But, fixing social media algorithms doesn't solve the core vulnerability if the underlying operating systems running the actual government ministries are still phoning home to foreign servers.
Yeah, not at all.
You can't preach data sovereignty to your citizens while your own police force is using proprietary software that leaks telemetry data.
That would be pretty hypocritical.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's why the next domino to fall had to be the software running inside the government itself.
And this is where the theoretical policy becomes highly practical and honestly disruptive reality.
Yeah.
Because it's one thing to pass a law regulating a social media app. It is another entirely to tear out the operating system of an entire sovereign government.
And the scale at which this is happening is just staggering. You look at what France is doing, their Interministerial Digital Directorate, DMM. They didn't just suggest a change. They issued an absolute mandate.
Right.
They're replacing Windows with Linux across all ministries by autumn 2026. And this isn't some small-scale pilot program to test the waters. The Gendarmerie Nationale, the French National Police Force, has already deployed their own custom, heavily secured version of Linux.
Ubuntu.
Yes, Ubuntu, on over 100,000 active machines.
It's incredible. And Germany is executing equally massive infrastructural shifts, too.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the state of Schleswig-Holstein has become a global case study for this. They recently migrated 30,000 government computers entirely to Linux. And the dual benefits are striking.
I bet.
Economically, they are saving roughly 15 million euros annually on exorbitant software licensing fees alone.
Wow, 15 million euros.
Yeah, but ethically, they achieved a 90% reduction in vendor lock-in. And this connects directly to the mechanics of data ethics we discussed earlier.
Wait, how does switching the operating system directly enforce data ethics? I mean, software is software, right?
It's all through the mechanism of auditable open source code. A core tenet of digital ethics is verification. You fundamentally cannot ensure privacy if you cannot independently see the code that is processing your data.
Because otherwise it's just trust.
Exactly. Proprietary software is a sealed black box. You just have to trust the company's marketing department that they aren't scanning your files.
And we know how that goes.
Right. Open source software, however, allows government security auditors to examine every single line of code. They can mathematically verify exactly how data is being routed, ensuring there are absolutely no backdoors, no hidden telemetry, and no quiet data streams siphoning sensitive info back to foreign servers.
Which perfectly contextualizes the launch of Office EU, or Euro Office, back in March 2026.
Yes, a massive step.
This is a huge initiative backed by a coalition of privacy-first companies like Nextcloud and Proton. It's this open-source, fully auditable alternative to Microsoft Office, explicitly engineered around European values of sovereignty and transparency.
Right.
But here's where it gets really interesting.
Yeah.
If you ever worked in an office, you know that changing a single workflow can cause a meltdown.
Oh, absolute chaos.
Doing this on a national scale is like replacing the engine of a car while the driver is still speeding down the highway. How do they actually execute this without causing absolute chaos? I mean, civil servants still need to draft legislation, calculate budgets, and function daily.
Yeah, the historical graveyard of failed IT migrations is entirely due to that exact friction.
Right.
So to solve this, the transition strategy for EuroOffice relies on the mechanism of strategic compatibility. It's like putting that new engine into the car, but ensuring it connects perfectly to the exact same gas pedal and steering wheel the driver has used for 20 years.
Oh, that's clever.
Your office is engineered to natively edit standard proprietary formats, your traditional DOCX and XLSX files, without corrupting the formatting.
So the end user doesn't even necessarily feel the disruption.
Exactly. The user interface mirrors what they already know, radically minimizing the learning curve. And beyond technical compatibility, they are utilizing highly phased incremental rollouts.
Makes sense.
Denmark provides a perfect example of this. Back in 2025, they didn't just flip a switch for the whole country. They started testing the LibreOffice suite within a tightly controlled pilot group inside the Ministry of Digitalization.
So they find the bugs early.
Right. They identify the specific workflow frictions, iron out the bugs, and only then proceed to a full government rollout in 2026. It is a highly calculated, surgical dismantling of technological dependence.
Okay, so they're successfully ripping out proprietary word processors and desktop operating systems in the public sector.
Yeah.
That's a massive win for sovereignty. But the ethical battle becomes vastly more complicated when we lift our eyes from the desktop and look at the future of technology. Right?
No, completely.
Artificial intelligence and industrial cloud computing. This is where the mechanisms of control get incredibly messy.
Yeah, if we connect this to the bigger picture, true tech sovereignty isn't just about consumer applications or what word processor a clerk uses.
Right.
It is about the massive structural data architectures that will run the global economy for the next century. Europe recognizes that the battle for the consumer internet search engines, social media, was largely lost to the U.S. decades ago.
Yeah, that ship has sailed.
But Europe possesses massive, unparalleled strength in industrial manufacturing. We are talking about advanced automotive engineering, precision robotics, global logistics.
And all of those industries generate a mind-boggling amount of highly valuable data.
Precisely. And that data is the fuel for the next generation of artificial intelligence. To protect this, Europe is building architectures like Gaia-X and Catena-X. These introduce a revolutionary mechanism called industrial data spaces.
Okay, let's break that down, because Gaia-X gets thrown around a lot in these reports. How does an industrial data space actually work compared to something like, Amazon Web Services?
Think of AWS as a massive, centralized mega warehouse.
Okay.
If you want their computing power, you have to pack up all your highly valuable proprietary goods and hand them over to be stored inside their warehouse under their ultimate control.
Right.
Gaia-X operates completely differently. It is not a single cloud. It's a federated set of strict rules and interoperability standards. It's more like a standardized shipping container system.
Okay.
European companies keep their highly sensitive industrial data stored securely on their own local servers. But using the Gaia-X standards, they can securely connect and pool that data together to train advanced AI models without ever physically surrendering the underlying data to a foreign tech giant.
Wow, so they get the benefit of the AI without giving up the data.
Exactly. It ensures the intellectual property and the ethical frameworks remain strictly within European borders.
And there's a fascinating environmental ethic woven into this as well. When we talk about AI, we have to talk about power grids. Europe is pushing heavily into this green digital nexus, taking a firm ethical stance on sustainability.
Yeah, the energy consumption required to train modern AI models is rapidly escalating into a global environmental crisis. Traditional computer chips suffer from something called the von Neumann bottleneck. They constantly have to burn massive amounts of power moving data back and forth between the memory and the processor.
Right.
To combat this, Europe is heavily funding the development of neuromorphic chips.
Neuromorphic. How do those solve the power issue?
Neuromorphic chips literally mimic the biological structure of the human brain.
Really?
Yeah. They process and store data in the exact same location, functioning like organic synapses. This fundamentally eliminates that data shuffling bottleneck, which means they can execute complex AI tasks while consuming a fraction of the electricity.
That is incredible.
It is a direct attempt to weave the ethic of environmental sustainability into the very atomic structure of the next computing revolution.
But I have to bring up a glaring contradiction here.
Okay, let's hear it.
We just spent this entire time talking about escaping American tech dominance, building local ecosystems, protecting data.
Yeah.
Yet, if you look at the investment landscape, 12 of the most promising European AI startups were just selected for Amazon's 2026 AWS Pioneers cohort.
Yes.
How can Europe possibly claim they are achieving tech sovereignty while their most ambitious, cutting-edge AI projects are literally being built right now on top of American cloud infrastructure? I mean, it feels completely paradoxical.
This raises an important question, and honestly, it highlights the central, painful tension of the entire sovereignty movement. The policymakers are fully aware of this paradox. They refer to it as the innovation to exit drain.
What does that mean mechanically?
Mechanically, European universities and research hubs produce incredible, world-leading startups. But the European capital market is highly fragmented.
Oh, I see.
A startup in Paris struggles to seamlessly raise funds across borders in Madrid or Berlin, the way a startup in Silicon Valley can access massive, unified pools of U.S. capital.
Because it's a unified market in the U.S.
Right. Because they lack that local hyperscale funding and infrastructure, they hit a growth ceiling. To scale globally, they are practically forced to rely on foreign infrastructure cohorts, or they simply get bought out entirely by foreign giants.
Which defeats the purpose.
Exactly. Achieving full end-to-end tech sovereignty, like building parity in hyperscale clouds and advanced semiconductor foundries, is estimated to cost a staggering 3.6 trillion euros. Europe simply does not have that capacity right now.
So despite all these massive regulatory wins, are they ultimately just stuck?
They aren't stuck, but they are in a highly pragmatic transition. Europe has moved from a phase of pure regulatory defense into what they call a capability-first phase.
Capability first.
Right. Mechanically, this means policymakers must temporarily swallow their pride and accept certain dependencies on foreign infrastructure today while furiously investing to close the gap for tomorrow.
That's a calculated triage.
Exactly. You see this vividly in their 2025 quantum strategy. European leaders know they permanently lost the classical computing race to the US and Asia.
Yeah, that race is over.
Right. Rather than bankrupting themselves fighting a losing battle over old technology, they are pivoting. They are pouring their unified resources into leading the next paradigm quantum computing and sustainable AI.
That's a huge bet.
It is a massive, calculated gamble. They're trying to leapfrog the current technological era entirely so that when the next revolution matures, Europe owns the infrastructure from day one.
Synthesizing all of this, the journey Europe is undertaking is nothing short of historic. If you're a developer listening to this, the shift toward federated systems like Gaia X means the tech stack you'll be required to build on in the next 5 years is going to look fundamentally different.
Completely different.
Yeah. And if you're a user, it means the underlying social contract of the internet is being rewritten in real time to prioritize your agency over an algorithm's engagement metrics.
Absolutely.
Europe is aggressively proving that privacy, interoperability, and ethical design aren't just academic buzzwords. They can be forcefully engineered into the very foundation of a digital ecosystem. They are presenting global tech giants with a stark ultimatum.
Adapt or leave.
Exactly. Adapt to these strict, auditable ethical standards or face losing access to the public sectors and massive industrial markets of an entire continent.
And that leaves us with a critical global implication to consider. As Europe successfully walls off its data, its infrastructure, and its hardware to protect its specific ethical standards, we have to look at the collateral impact on the rest of the world.
Right. If the internet permanently fractures into localized digital fortresses, say, a U.S. libertarian model, a Chinese state-controlled model, and a European sovereign model, what happens to the developing nations in the global south?
That's a great question.
Will they be forced to choose allegiance to one of these three digital empires just to participate in the modern economy? In our pursuit of regional digital sovereignty, we may be inadvertently architecting the quiet final death of the World Wide Web as a unified global resource.